working in synthetic materials for the past couple years now, a lot of which were kind of interfacing things out of the domestic space, using rubber, resins, materials of that nature. So this piece are actual bottles that were cast. I made molds off of them, cast them in a rubber, directly off of a retail space. And what interests me here with these is this whole kind of dialogue interchange between consumer and producer. There are so many products out there that have this real, sometimes subtle, not so subtle, eroticism and sexuality to it. I made molds directly off of them, cast them into rubber, colored them this particular pink or fleshy tone. This summer I had a great opportunity to be up in McDowell, the colony up in New Hampshire, and so most of this work was done. This piece I did up there, and I find myself actually going around to a lot of the retail spaces. This is an actual welcome mat that was cast in a black rubber that I took. I made a mold directly off of it, and I cast it into rigid plastic and colored it this kind of advertisement to kind of orange. These are all cast a rigid resin as an actual commercial sign would be, and certainly the color also comes out of that kind of retail commercial space. These kind of screaming yellows and oranges. Load size and soil come directly from words that exist on a washer and dryer unit, respectively. And you know, the decorative pattern comes from actually a carpet, a fabric that I made a mold directly off of. This piece here, crushed, I recreated it exactly like a manufactured welcome mat would be. It's all one cast rubber mat. The words are physically incorporated on the mat itself. There was just something about the word crush that resonated with me in this format. This towel rack, or rather I should say this stack, is a rigid cast plastic. Again, the rubber mat here. And I saw this I just took this directly off of a shelf in a store. I saw it almost as this like Judd-like cube. And there was just something for me really compelling about it, and took it, cast it, put it on the mat here. It's a little bit different from the other pieces in the sense there's more of a kind of an implied narrative to it. What I found kind of fascinating and interesting about, you're looking at these forms, and I would actually walk through retail spaces and identify with certain products that really kind of bridge that world between an artwork or a highly designed object and actually a work of art. Well, I've been doing art as long as I can remember, basically. I grew up in Maryland. Both my parents were New Yorkers. My father actually went to Cooper Union as well, so art was in the family. During high school, I went to a secondary kind of special school for talented kids in Rockville, Maryland. So I had my base high school during the day, and then in the afternoon I would take these art classes, which was actually really invaluable at that time period for somebody, a teenager. Really helped with portfolio development and the first time getting into issues and the realization of what it means maybe to be an artist. I'm fortunate to have a very good teacher at that time period. Went to New York in '82, went to Cooper Union, and which was also an invaluable experience for me. Worked with a number of professors that were a great influence on me, and continued afterwards. Again, as I said, went to Italy. I was painting at the time. Returned to New York. I probably the beginning of the inception of dealing with domestic space came from this particular piece, which is called Figure 54, and this was at Smack Mellon Studios in 2000. So I saw these pieces and everything there sort of as vestiges of one's life, So I took the actual furniture and suspended it 20 feet in the air in the context of the gallery, which was an old spice factory. It very much was a play off of period rooms, not unlike if you go to the Met and you see Louis XIV's bedchamber. So what I did was I made molds off the actual items, furniture, and in the process everything was destroyed. So, and that was very much part of the content and the idea of the piece. So they became, and I wanted this calcified bone white kind of material, so I used, it's a plaster, it's a gypsum-based plaster, and they became just objects. When I displayed it, I didn't recreate the domestic setting as I did before. You know, I emphasized the non-functionality of the objects. Because everything that I've been doing and currently do relate to the body or directed the body without actually representing the figure itself. This section of the dresser unit kind of flayed or splayed out on the wall, not too dissimilar to tailor clothing patterns, which led more directly into this piece, which was shown at the Brooklyn Museum. And again, coming from a very personal source, this is my grandfather's clothing, but yet less of a nostalgic statement, but more as a platform. This is kind of an amalgam of some of the signage pieces and the other pieces of the bottle and cosmetic pieces. A lot of times there's this, again, you kind of see this almost modernist reference between the product, or if you will, the sculptural proper, and this pedestal or base, particularly in cosmetic display. You know, you see in many different retail, you know, the idea of the shelf becoming the pedestal or a table, and the products themselves, these commodity fetish. So I took that almost as just kind of this wall-oriented piece. The model itself coming through as one of the integrated images. And this is just a combination of all words that come from many different appliances. And using this, an actual wallpaper piece to reference the home. With these pieces, the Dove bottles were done exactly the same. The original pieces taken directly out of the retail space, cast. These are in a rigid plastic, not too dissimilar from the original material itself. And that was part of the idea as well, that these castings are really of the same quality of the actual manufactured object as well. That's one other part that brought me in to the retail space, was it's very clean, almost clinical, highly designed sensibility. It's an actual Dove bottle. So by making a mold off of it, I'm able to create an exact one-to-one relationship, you know, size, scale, essentially the same thing. But by casting it, it becomes completely recontextualize something entirely different. This is an example with some of the rubber pieces right here. This piece, I don't know if you want, is, for instance, this piece right here. So basically the whole process of the casting is I'll take the original item, for instance the Dove bottle, make a mold. This is a silicone rubber mold, a very simple box mold. Resin will be poured into the mold itself. And during the process of mixing the resin, a lot of air is introduced through the drill with what's referred to as a speed mixer. And it's clear actually, so I'm able, that's where the color comes in. I'm able to tint it a variety of different colors. In this case, obviously blue. So after the resin is poured in here, I'll put it into, it's a vacuum chamber, and this is a vacuum pump. It's the opposite of a compressor. Instead of blowing air, it's sucking all the air out of the resin, which will give me a perfect manufactured type product, which is, you know, really essential along with the idea of what I'm doing. And after that, to ensure that no air actually is trapped in there, just an insurance, I do the opposite. I put it in to this large chamber here. This is a pressure pot. So the mold will be placed in here before it actually catalyzes and hardens. And I use a compressor, so now I'm forcing air into the pot itself, and it achieves about 65 psi's. So it's a much higher pressure than the atmosphere itself, rather. So between these two processes, I'm able to get the final perfect cast.